Did you know that there is a secret society tucked away that watches every player, every snap, and every NFL and Division I college football game? These hidden people shape the way we view players, teams, and drafts. I'm talking about the actually not so secret Pro Football Focus, the polarizing advanced stats and player grading website that's trying to do what's been nearly impossible to do forever, to quantify football. Today, we're going to find out where they came from and if their numbers are genius or garbage, and exactly why that is. And that's coming up right after this. Neil Hornsby has never played a down of football in his life. Not the American kind, at least. He was born in the UK, and when British television began broadcasting the NFL in 1983, Neil was hooked. But he was always frustrated at the way we looked at football. It was a qualitative sport, meaning we judge football players by our own thoughts and observations. Mike Singletary is a hard hitter. John Elway has a rocket arm. Lawrence Taylor has a nose for the ball. Lawrence Taylor has a nose for other things. It was hardly scientific, which meant football was an inefficient sport, like most others at the time. In 2004, Neil began assigning grades to players and eventually in 2007 put those grades on his website, Pro Football Focus. Not exhaustively like his company does today, but enough that he caught the eye of a major football entity. His data was meant simply to start a conversation with fellow UK fans. Some bloody good banter after their tea interval is what I believe they'd call it. It turns out the New York Giants were reading his little blog. The G-men loved it and wanted more data, so they hired Hornsby to help them evaluate players using his methodology, and they immediately went to and won the Super Bowl. That same year, Chris Collinsworth was announcing his first big game for NBC in Indianapolis, Super Bowl 46 between said Giants and the Patriots. Driving through Indy, Collinsworth's wife began to tell him about an article in the Wall Street Journal entitled, "Giants Go Long for a Number Cruncher," describing how Hornsby contributed to their Super Bowl run. Ernestine, okay, just kidding, her name is Holly, told Chris, "You should work this into your broadcast," and here's how he responded. "I can clearly remember saying, I am not talking about some Brit and what he's doing with football. This is the Super Bowl. And 4 years later, I owned a majority stake of the company. Spoiler alert. Turns out, Ernestine provided the big break PFF needed. Yep, in 2014, here's a guy who slid in and bought most of PFF and moved them to Cincinnati, near Collinsworth's home in Kentucky. It started with a call to Hornsby trying to get a read on the Brit who he thought had swindled him out of $26.99. Collinsworth grilled Hornsby, trying to test his knowledge. "I just shut up and started listening," Collinsworth said. "He knew more about it than me." So the former Bengal ramped up operations, and soon PFF expanded to college football and the draft. The ball was in motion. Virtually, I guess. As of 2019, PFF provides information and grades to all 32 NFL teams and 74 college football teams. Collinsworth, who didn't want to work the story into his broadcast, now uses his grades on air to tell the story.
When you're coming in there is a good chance that you're going to be very hard.
Next time you watch Sunday Night Football, look at the player intros and you'll see their PFF positional ranking below their name.
Matthew Judon, body built by Taco Bell.
Well, if that doesn't smell like a conflict of interest. With Collinsworth's leadership and, more importantly, his name attached to the company, PFF began to beat out other analytics sites like Football Outsiders, and their subscriptions began to soar. Before we look at PFF with the critical eye, let's dig into why people pay for this service. So why was there a market for something like PFF in the first place? Hornsby's website caught on for one obvious reason. Standard football stats are unable to give an accurate depiction of what happened on any given play or game. Unlike a number-obsessed game like baseball, where outcomes are individual and isolated, football is the ultimate team game, and thus a player's individual statistics are not totally accumulated by his own doing. For instance, if a quarterback throws a pass that bounces off his receiver's hands and is intercepted, all the INT on the stat sheet shows is that the quarterback turned the ball over, not that he threw a good pass to 2018 Nelson Aguilar.
We was catching, unlike Aguilar.
Similarly, if a defensive end chases a quarterback into the stationary arms of a defensive tackle, it's the tackle that gets credit for the whole play, not the end. In baseball, the numbers paint a near-perfect picture of what your eyes see on the field, and there are so many games that most sets of eyes can't possibly sit through that. It's necessary to fall back on the numbers to draw conclusions and make serious decisions like contract extensions, playing time, and handing out awards. But in football, the numbers may not be as important as they are in baseball. With only 16 games, a good fan or coach will see every throw that their team's quarterback makes, every catch, and every kick. But there's still plenty that goes under the radar. It's noticed when it becomes a problem, but most people have no idea how to quantify offensive linemen other than terms like good, bad, brick wall, or Eric Flowers. So PFF did something about it. They decided to watch each lineman and give them 2 grades, one for pass blocking and another for run blocking. Same for the defensive players. The eye test reveals a lot, but our eyes are limited. They typically only follow the ball, or they're restricted by camera placement. For instance, it's hard to tell who's responsible for a collapsing pocket from the CBS angle, or it's hard to tell the quarterback got sacked because the safety out of frame had perfect coverage down the field. That can cause us to defer to the opinions of people we deem to be authorities on the game. Former players, broadcasters, Urinating Tree, Brandon Perna, Brett Coleman, and anyone that's not named, Skip Bayless. It's good that PFF has caused us to think about the game differently. It helps us focus on the process rather than the outcome, because the process will more often predict the future than what happened on a single play, game, or season. Pressures are more indicative of good pass rushing than sacks, but we only used to look at sacks, and those aren't the most reliable metric we have in terms of predicting future performance. But as much as PFF has done to fix our simpleton brains, it's not Bill James for football, and I'm here to tell you why. Here's the problem. PFF still uses the eye test, just in a more complete and thorough manner. Their grades are not advanced statistics, they're qualitative judgments. Saying an apple is shiny is not the same as measuring its circumference, just like saying a quarterback made an accurate throw is not the same as saying his pass traveled 22 yards at a .45 degree arc. There's nothing wrong with grades as long as people understand that despite the assumption of expertise, PFF's data are still opinions that are subject to biases, human error, and incomplete information. Too many people treat PFF as gospel, but it's as much science fact as, well, whatever you choose to believe on Twitter. Plenty of players, the guys being graded, don't much care for PFF and the way it shapes the perception of their worth on the field. There's no way you can possibly accurately grade offensive linemen if you haven't done that job before in your life. A lot of these guys, they're not qualified to be grading NFL players, former guard TJ Lang said. It raises a serious question. If the guys making the grades don't know the play that's supposed to be run, the nuances or routes, or the complexities of protections, how can they accurately judge what a player did right or wrong on any given play? Even Bill Belichick struggles with that question. In terms of analytics, you get a lot of this guy should have them, that guy should have them. I know from our team there are times when we don't know exactly what went wrong until we sort out the play. Belichick mumble. We get it wrong too. We're watching another team on film and we've seen all the plays and we're still not even sure who was supposed to do what. If the master of film study can't figure it out on his team's every play, can we trust the guys at PFF too? There are some things that happen on a field that are obvious and can be graded. A ball that's clearly dropped, a missed tackle, or an offensive lineman run over by a defender. But games are more often decided by crucial little things, miscommunications that turn into blown coverages or interceptions, blitz pickups, or the way the Patriots just seem to know what was coming every play. You can't measure that if you're not in the huddle, and some of the guys at PFF have never set foot in one. Boom, roasted by me, a guy who's never set foot in a huddle. So, as much as PFF tries to make it happen, football is not able to be totally quantified through statistics or grades. In a way, it's sometimes better that we don't. Seeing some of football and what these superhuman athletes do as nearly impossible or unexplainable is what makes the game so romantic. You could argue that some of the passion in baseball has been clouded by an avalanche of numbers meant to reduce the game to a science, and as of now, that's not possible with football. The guys at PFF are, without a doubt, bright and intelligent people who understand football, but they're like college professors teaching a subject rather than a scientist doing a field study. The really big problem is that PFF is starting to become treated as an unimpeachable fact and marketed as such. When Chris Collinsworth uses PFF metrics or grades on a Sunday Night Football broadcast, people start to perceive it like it's any other indisputable stat that NBC flashes at the bottom of the screen during the broadcast. In reality, it all comes down to someone who's probably overworked and exhausted from watching thousands of plays to make their best guess. So when you're bombarded by numbers from PFF, just remember to give them the old eye test, or if you're LT, a good sniff. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more interesting videos on sports. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to my next film. I don't want to say video again.